Warning, inflation ahead, but not quite yet. Consumers have made some headway in paying down their debt and deleveraging since the financial crisis began in 2009, but the U.S. government has added an equal amount of debt and then some onto its own books. The overall debt picture hasn't improved any. Instead, it's gotten worse, and it keeps growing as the government shows no inclination to slow down its own debt accumulation. At this point, one of two things can happen. We can default on this debt, or we can use inflation to erode the value of money owed, making payback a bit easier. Now, the U.S. government is never going to default on its debt, so you can bet your last dime that once we get through the current deflationary period, your future dollars will drop in value during the next economic season. We expect this turn toward inflation to begin around 2020. That's just 5 short years from now. But that's not the only force at work. There's one factor pushing us toward inflation that's far more important than the government. It's people. According to our demographic clock, the time for change is fast approaching. As people change their spending habits, they affect the economy. When large groups of people make the same changes at the same time, the effects can be overwhelming. Think of the ravenous consumption of the baby boomers that propelled the economy higher. Well, now that the boomers are past their peak spending years and preparing for retirement, it seems that nothing can pry open their wallets. This is why we remain in the deflation camp for now. The next large group of people, the millennials, is walking up their own spending wave. As they do so, they will pull us out of the winter economic season and into the next inflationary period, the spring season. Consumption by the millennials will follow the same path as previous generations, leading to predictable spending patterns that we can count on to grow our economy. As the millennials marry and start families, they'll increase the demand for affordable housing, driving a rebound in starter homes at the low end of the market. Along with demands for homes will come demands for mortgages. For the majority of Americans, their mortgage is the largest debt they will ever incur, and one of the most inflationary moves they can make. This is where the forces of the next economic season come into play, and why we can expect inflation to arrive in about 5 years. Credit makes it possible to spend tomorrow's income today. It creates new money to let buyers satisfy their demands, and then the money supply is growing faster than the available goods and services. The value of money falls, creating inflation. As millennials move into the housing market en masse, the demand for mortgages will drive up lending. The gatekeeper in this game is the Federal Reserve. By paying interest on excess reserves, the Fed creates a disincentive for banks to loan out funds to other banks where it could be put to use as new credit. A lack of available credit drives interest rates higher. At the same time, the Fed will be interested in growth, so it will create a way to let the excess reserves flow into the economy in an orderly manner. As more millennials buy their first homes, eventually creating inflation, it's good for the government as it gives them a way to pay back less debt by cheapening the dollars that are used for the repayment. Inflation should flow all the way through the economy, finally driving up wages and prices across the board. Knowing all of this gives you the power to begin exploring which assets to buy for an inflationary environment before the changes take place.